guys, and welcome back to my channel. And I know that this is a Saturday, but I'm actually going to be filming on Saturdays now. So Wednesdays and Saturdays I'm going to be posting. I'll try my best, and I just wanted to get more content out there for you guys, and I really love YouTube, so I wanted to do it more often. This is my first Saturday video, and I'm just gonna get into it. We're gonna do a Let's Talk video, and I'm just gonna be presenting to you a sermon that I preached last summer, so a while ago now, and it's just something that I'm very passionate about, and it's on my heart a lot, especially when I was in high school it was, and I'm just gonna show you it today. So it's called, If Not You, Then Who Else? One of the things that was very important to me in high school was reaching the people around me. I went to two, but when I was an upperclassman, I went to a school that was a private school, and it was full of people that said they knew Jesus, but their actions didn't follow what they were saying. Or they knew Jesus, they went to church, they served, they did all of the right things, but I could tell that their heart wasn't really in the right place. So these were the people that I was surrounded by, and I really had a heart for them, even though they were so stubborn and most of them didn't really want to hear what I had to say, but I really had a heart to reach them, and that's what this sermon came out of, was my heart really to reach my own school. So we're going to be talking about the book of Esther today. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background of the book of Esther. It's one of my favorite books of the Bible, so let me tell you what it's about. King Xerxes was the king of Persia at the time, and he was married to Vashti, but they ended up divorcing because of some issues, and King Xerxes needed a new queen. So he's on the hunt for a new queen throughout the country of Persia, and he sends a request for all of the young virgins to come to his castle, and he was basically gonna pick one, which kind of sounds dehumanizing, but that's how it was back then. So he picks his favorite one, and that happens to be our girl Esther. So that's basically the background of the story, which leads me to my first point. It's never too early to start going after your calling, to start reaching the people around you. Esther, when she was called to be queen of a country, she was estimated to be 14 years old, which is way younger than me, and she was a queen of this entire country. That is crazy young. The thing is about God, he doesn't really look at our ages. He looks at just our willingness and our obedience and just our heart. And obviously, Esther had a heart for the Lord at the age of 14. 1 Timothy 4:12 says, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you're young." And I think this is such an important verse, that especially for people that are watching that might be in middle school or high school, that you don't have to be an adult to make a difference. And you definitely can stand up for the Lord as a teenager. That's so important to remember. So, fast forwarding to Esther, when these young virgins were brought to the king, they had to go through this intense preparation, like a year of preparation just to be presented to the king. Esther 2:12 says she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil for myrrh, and 6 months with perfume and cosmetics. So that is a long time. Now, for us, we're not going through that intense preparation, none of that. But when we're stepping into what God calls us to do, we have to, my point number 2, know what we're talking about. We have to spend our own time with the Lord, our own time in the Word, our own time hanging out with people who know more about the Lord than we do, so that we can know what we're talking about when we step into what God's calling us to do. We have to be prepared and not just walk in blindly, just thinking, God's got me when I get there. Yes, he does, but at the same time, we want to prepare our hearts and our minds for the calling that God has for us. So Esther gets chosen by King Xerxes, and there was kind of a problem in the city of Persia at this point in time, because King Xerxes had a right-hand man. His name was Haman, and he was a pretty bad dude. He hated the Jews. He hated God's people, And that's what Esther happened to be, by the way. So he suggested to the king that the Jews should be wiped out from the country of Persia. And the king, because he listens to his right-hand man, was like, sounds like a good idea. Little do they know that their queen is a Jew. So Esther is completely unaware of what's going on until her cousin Mordecai comes in. He sneaks into the palace and tells her what's going on, that the Jews are about to be wiped out from the planet, which was kind of freaky and a little bit scary to Esther and to Mordecai. So Mordecai is begging Esther, you have to tell the king who you are, your identity, and save us all because we don't deserve to be wiped out. We honor the Lord. He says to Esther in Esther 4:14, and who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Basically what he's saying is God brought you to be queen so that you could save us. This is why God brought you to this place, because I'm sure at this point Esther had no idea why she was queen at 14 and what the heck she's doing, especially because she's a Jew. So that leads me to my third point. Number 3, know what you're called to do. God has a calling for each and every one of us, and obviously a very broad calling for every one of us is to preach the gospel. That's what the Great Commission is in Matthew 20, I think. But for each and every one of us, that looks different. God might be calling you to minister to your high school, where God was calling me to my high school, and now He's calling me to the youth. So God has a different way of calling each and every one of us to do the Great Commission. So you have to figure out what that is for you. You have to figure out how you're supposed to show God's love to your school, to your workplace, to your family, because each one of those areas has a different need. My school had a need for someone to show them what it actually looks like to serve God, and they needed someone to show them what it's like to not be fake, but to be real and to have God's real love inside of them. That's what my school needed. But for you, that might be completely different. Your school might need someone to bring joy because there's a lot of depression, or peace because there's a lot of chaos and anxiety. Whatever that might be for your school, you have to know what God's calling you specifically to show and just live out for your school. The only way to do what God's calling us to do is get support. That's my 4th point, get support. And for Esther, she asked Mordecai to get her some support. She says in Esther 4:16, go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. She was asking them to pray for her because they couldn't physically support her. They couldn't go to the palace. Mordecai had to sneak into the palace because they weren't allowed to go in there. But she wanted them to pray for her and support her in that way. So you definitely are going to need support when you're walking out on what God calls you to do. We're not supposed to do this thing alone, and back then I had an amazing support system, and they were so encouraging to me, and I just really appreciated them for that season in my life. And I know that you definitely will need that in your season of life when you're stepping into what God's calling you to do. So Esther finally tells the king that she's a Jew. After a while of procrastination, she tells the king, hey, I'm a Jew. You shouldn't kill us because I'm one of them. So the king saves the Jews. But the thing about Esther is she didn't give up, because her going into the king's throne room, his area, his room, unannounced would have caused her to be killed. But she didn't give up. Even after she procrastinated for so long, she knew what she had to do. She knew what God was calling her to do, and she didn't give up. And for us, it might take a while to see results for our labor. It might take a while to see people actually being transformed by the example we're setting or the encouragement that we're getting. But we don't give up, even when it does take a while and we don't see those results. Some of us might not see results till years down the road, which honestly that's probably going to be my case, because I didn't really see many results when I was in high school, but I know that I did what God called me to do, and I don't regret any of that. And it was so fulfilling to me to go after the calling that God had in my life for that season. And that might be the case for you, and it sucks, I know, but we have to just continue running the race and doing what God is asking us. One thing to keep in mind, maybe when we're not seeing results or we're kind of getting discouraged and those types of things, is my last point. God is always working, even in the midst of the details, and we don't understand what He's doing. God is always working. And in Romans 8:28 it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." So we know that we are going after what God's calling us to do, and that means God's going to work for the good of those who love Him. He's working for our good, and we might not understand that, and we might be confused at what the heck God is doing, but He's still working despite what we directly see. He's doing things in the supernatural that we don't understand yet, and that's something I just take comfort in, and I just always remind myself that God is always working. So my question I have to pose to you today is, think about the people in your area. So this might be your school or your family or your workplace. Think about the people in your area. And I want you to really evaluate, would any of them stand up for the Lord? For me, I knew none of them would really stand up for the Lord. None of them would really proclaim His love and His truth in a way that I knew I was capable of. So I knew that if not for me, no one else would do it. So ask yourself, if not you, then who else is going to do it? Who else is going to stand up for the people that can't stand up for themselves? And who else is going to be the encourager for the broken, like God calls us to be? So, if you want to commit to doing that, I really encourage you to comment down below, because I'd love to encourage you in this journey. And I know I definitely needed it when I was stepping into it, so I'd love to encourage you on this journey. So comment down below, just explain your situation, your area, and what you think God's calling you to do. I'd love to help you out. So that's my sermon for you today, and I really hope you learned something out of it. Let me know. I'll see you on Wednesday, actually. So goodbye!